What's up guys, I'm Follygon, and in this video I have a speed sculpt for you of a mushroom character, of a Shroomy Boy. Shroomman. Gary Shrooman. Link to the original 2D concept down in the description. Go check out their work, and while this sculpt is playing, I want to talk to you guys about critique, and my thoughts on the subject matter. So we have giving and receiving critique. And I'm going to start with what I think is the easier of the two, which is giving critique. And I only think that giving critique is easier than receiving critique because after you give critique, that's kind of the end of that process. And when you're receiving critique, there's kind of a little extra bit on the end of that you have to do. You have to kind of take that critique and run with it and try and improve with it. So with giving critique, it kind of depends on what the person is asking for, how specific they are, and kind of how acquainted they are with their subject matter, if they're drawing or sculpting or whatever it is. What I like to do if someone is really new getting into ZBrush and they're saying, hey, this is my first thing, or hey, I've been playing with ZBrush for the past week, can you critique this for me? My objective there is to not give them a laundry list of items that they can improve upon, because primarily that's really discouraging to them and they really just don't know where to go next. So it's kind of like a call to action where you want to give them like the one main thing that they can improve upon, and this doesn't have to be the most important thing that they can do to make their work better. It can, and that can be helpful, but you want to give them something that's simple, that kind of encourages them a little bit to get back in and get some more work done. Because when people are asking for critique at this stage, they're brand new, they're kind of looking for a little bit of acceptance, like, hey, am I on the right track? Am I kind of doing the right thing? Because honestly, at this point, they have such a lack of knowledge and understanding on the topic that they just don't know. They need some kind of reassurance, like, hey, you're going in a direction, but let me try to point you closer to true north, to the correct direction. So hey, maybe you should grab a trim brush and try to kind of solidify your planes, your forms a lot more. Get those primary shapes down, and when you give advice like this, you want to also give a tool or a method that they can kind of take and concretely run with. So like, try some of the trim brushes and, you know, hold the Alt key to build up form and let go of it to destroy some form, and kind of flatten out your shapes and really try to keep that polygon count low. We're going for primary shapes here, and that's what I would work on here. Try to go from there. So that's like my goal, at least when I'm trying to give critique to someone that is in the very early stages of development. For someone that's a little bit more experienced, maybe of an intermediate level or of a higher level, you can kind of start to laundry list stuff out that they want to kind of work on or improve. Because at this point, that person has kind of been doing this for a while, probably received some critiques before, and they've built up that thick skin. So when you're listing these things out, or for whatever specific thing that you're talking about that they could maybe work on and improve, I personally just like to say, first off, what I like about their work. Just because that's encouraging to them, I want them to work more, and I want them to improve. That is my goal with giving a critique. And the best way that someone can improve is by encouraging them to continue to practice and work and improve on their craft. So I always like to start with just telling them immediately what I like or love or enjoy about their piece. From there, it comes down to telling them what they could improve on and how they could improve on it. So again, going back to that analogy of like, hey, your forms are a little rough here. Try and lower that poly count. That's a specific thing that they can do. And try out some of the trim brushes to solidify and plane out those forms. Get like a really plainer kind of shape going, or just very simple primary forms. That's like a specific thing that they can hear, that they need to work on, and say, okay, that's something I can try. And as you're getting to more of these advanced stages of users kind of asking for critique, it can get a little bit harder, and a lot of it can sometimes come down to opinion. And we'll kind of switch gears here and talk about receiving critique now, because I think that's kind of where opinion and a lot of these things really matter. So when receiving critique, the side of this half that I believe is the more difficult thing to do, because you are emotionally tied to your work, because you put so much effort into what you're doing, and from that point, just having someone spend 2 minutes writing a thing about something that you spent 2 weeks on, that can be tough sometimes, especially for people that are new to receiving this kind of critique. So when you're asking for critique, the first thing that I like to say to people that are like seeking critique is, what are you looking for out of this? Like I said, a lot of people in the early stages are kind of looking for reassurance. Hey, am I going in the right direction? The answer is typically no, but let me point you in a closer direction that you need to go. So when you're asking for critique, the first thing you should do is be specific. If you really want to improve, you should be able to spend that 1 minute, 5 minutes, however long it takes you, to just stare at your work, maybe flip your canvas a few times to see it in a new light, or walk away and come back after a little bit, so that you can personally critique your work and say, this is where I think I need to improve. This is where I think I need to improve. Maybe you're not too sure, that's okay. But I don't know how to improve this. And this is kind of very common for people that are new. So they think they know where they need to improve, and that's really not that hard to see a lot of the time. But they don't know how. So be specific. Maybe you say, I really want to improve this texture because I don't like it and I don't know how to make it better. Or maybe you want to say, hey, I feel like something's off in my torso anatomy, but I just don't know what it is. And that's when people can kind of hear what you're saying specifically and give you feedback to point you in the right direction that you are looking for. Being specific makes it easier for people giving you critique to give you good critique. So first of all, be specific, and then next, remove emotion from your work. Just completely remove yourself from your work. It's a very, very difficult thing to do. But when you are receiving critique, it is super important that you can kind of step away from it, that it no longer becomes your work, and you can kind of objectively look at it the same way that these people are objectively looking at it. The average viewing time that someone's gonna spend looking at your work, just kind of scrolling on an art forum or just on the internet, on social media, is like 4 seconds. People are gonna click on it, maybe, if you get lucky, and look at it for like 4 seconds, say, hey, that's cool, I like it, or hey, I hate it, and go on to the next thing, right? So there's not a lot of time invested for these people, and if you can kind of understand that and step away from it, like I said, it's a difficult thing to do, you're gonna be a lot more successful. So when you get those comments that say, hey, this sucks for this reason, this reason, this reason, this reason, one, that's terrible critique that they're giving you. It might be things that you do need to work on, but it's not being super helpful. It's just literally telling you what's wrong with it. But if you have stepped away from your work, you can kind of be better at receiving critique than they are at giving critique, and say, they are right. These are things that I need to improve. And you can kind of ask questions, or from there you can specifically ask, if you have not already done so, how can I improve on making these hands look more lifelike? Whatever it is. Removing emotion from your work when receiving critique doesn't only apply to getting those really shitty comments that people tell you that they hate your work. I think it also applies to when people tell you that they love your work. It's amazing. It's perfect. I love it. It's so great. I'm gonna share this with all my friends. And the reason that is because it kind of puts you in a position, if you take it to heart, that your work might be perfect, and maybe you know it's not, but you know, it does feel good to hear that stuff. It does feel good to know that somebody loved your work. But when you're seeking critique, you're seeking to improve, that comment is less helpful than someone giving you a critique where they literally just laundry list everything that's wrong with your work. And then this is when the next kind of step of receiving critique kind of comes into play. So you got being specific, removing your emotion from your work, and then judging your feedback. You are the artist. You are the person driving this work. You are the ultimate judge, the ultimate decision maker for everything that is going to happen. So any feedback that you get is going to be your ultimate decision whether or not you apply the changes that people are suggesting or anything that comes next in the next steps. To scrap it and start all over, it is all your final decision. So judge your feedback. And what I mean when I say judge your feedback is judge the people and the quality of critique that you are getting, because you are the one that has to make that ultimate decision in the end. When someone says, hey, I love your work, it's amazing, it's great, it's perfect. What's great about the internet and getting all these critiques is that they typically have their own kind of user profile. If you're on an art forum, or depending on where you are on the internet, you can just click on their name and go check out their stuff. And wow, look at that, they just have a bunch of this crappy artwork or whatever, where they just started and they're looking at you as someone who is above them, and they're astounded, they're amazed, and of course everything that you do is going to look amazing to them because they are that much newer to the topic or subject than you are. So kind of judge your feedback. When someone tells you that it's awful, it's terrible, whatever you did is terrible, maybe it's just that that's their opinion. And their opinion is that maybe your character is overly sexualized that you made, so they're just not comfortable with that, they don't like that. And that's not necessarily a fact that anything is wrong with your art, but it's a fact that they just don't like it, and that's okay. So once you get up to this higher level of kind of giving and receiving critique, a lot of it is gonna come down to opinion. And opinion is very important, but what you need to keep in mind is at the end of the day, your opinion is king. Your opinion is the final decision. And of course this changes when you're working with a client. Their opinion is very important, but they give you feedback, and from there you have to go from A to B and make all the decisions in between there that get you there. So still your opinion kind of reigns supreme even in that kind of situation. So when you're receiving and giving critique that is opinion based, just be aware that that's what it is. Look at it at face value. This is their opinion, and maybe it is congruent with your opinion, and you do want to act on that, and that's your decision. So take people's opinions and roll with them if they kind of agree with yours, and you can throw out the stuff that you don't like, going back to that judge your feedback kind of thing. It is your work at the end of the day. You can choose to listen to everyone, or you can choose to listen to no one. Or you can be smart and kind of pick and choose what you need to do by objectively looking at your work. So everything that I've said here, it's all my opinion on giving and receiving critique. It's all very difficult, but if you want to grow, if you want to get better, critique is highly overlooked in my opinion, and it's one of the best and fastest ways that you can improve. The times that I have improved and grown the fastest in my art is when I am surrounded by people daily working all in the same software, all working in ZBrush, doing the same thing day in, day out. You know, we can just yell over our shoulders, talk to each other, say, hey, try this instead, do this instead, whatever, try this tool. That's like critique 24/7 almost, and that is like the ultimate growth experience, at least for me personally. That's why mentorships and classrooms and all these things are so popular, right? That's kind of like it's like a full-time critique experience. So yeah, that's kind of my ramble on about critique and my opinions on the subject matter. Let me know what you guys think about critique down in the comments below, if you have received bad critique in the past, or if maybe you kind of changed your mind about how you need to maybe receive critique in the future and be more specific, or kind of try to step back from your work and objectively look at it. Let me know. I'd love to hear from you guys. Anyway, new videos are every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, with some live streams interspersed in there as well. Look out for those. And make sure you click that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Hope you learned something from this video, maybe got a little inspired to continue to work, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching, guys.